Welcome all of you and thank you for joining us. I'm joined on this call by my colleague on Federation's Communications and Community Relations Committee, Allyson Grant, and thank you to all of the members of the community who have joined us today. The roundtable will last no more than 1 hour and the format will be as follows. The candidates will each have up to 2 minutes for opening remarks. With appreciation to our committee members, they have prepared questions on issues of concern to the community that Ally and I will be posing. And then both candidates will have an opportunity, all three candidates will have an opportunity to answer. And for those of you who are watching, if you have a question for our candidates, please submit them using the chat function to the moderator, and Federation CEO Andrea Freedman will moderate a Q&A after the planned questions have been dealt with. After the Q&A, each candidate will have a brief opportunity for closing remarks. So let's begin with our opening remarks. First Shelby, then Nira, and then Pat. Shelby?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm just going to introduce myself and why I'm running.
Sorry, can I interrupt for one moment?
Of course.
There is a gentleman on screen, Steve Warren.
We have 4 candidates here.
Oh, I was not advised that there would be a 4th candidate. So, Steve, I'm sorry, what riding are you running in?
Ottawa West-Nepean.
Oh, that would be my riding. I haven't seen any of your signs yet. So welcome. And first Shelby, then Nira, then Pat, and then Stephen. I interrupted Shelby, I apologize.
No, that's okay. I'm just going to introduce myself and why I'm running. My name's Shelby. I'm of course with the Green Party of Ontario for Ottawa Centre. Prior to deciding to continue education, I had several positions in the civil service here in Ottawa, mainly with Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada, where my colleagues and I processed residential school sexual abuse files, and I learned just how far we have to go. I'm the proud daughter of a small business owner and a proud philosophy grad student. I also happen to have Crohn's disease, which has greatly informed my politics, and that struggle in my life really lit a political fire in me. And I'm passionate about combating polarization and building bridges between disagreeing groups. I'm from a small town where not a lot of people have the same political views as me, and I was eager to bring those philosophy skills of research and discussion and debate to a political arena. And I'm thrilled to have been asked to sit here today with your group and for us to have a really great discussion.
Thank you. And sorry, next, Nira.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and I acknowledge that we're having this Zoom meeting on Indigenous lands. My name is Nira Dookeran. I live now in Ottawa South, and I'm the candidate for Ottawa South. I'll just be very brief here. I have a son, I have many nieces and nephews, and I've taught thousands of students in schools in Toronto, and where I started my teaching career, and here in Ottawa at many schools, but notably at Glebe, and then I retired out of Ridgemont High School. I am a believer in education, and the reason I joined the Green Party is because I think, well, I know that I can bring my skills as an educator to the political arena and a communicator. What we need is to be able to talk to each other, communicate with each other, meaningfully listen to each other, dialogue with each other, as we're doing here today. We need more of this, and we need more of it now more than ever, with the kinds of really shocking and, well, unmentionable acts that are coming out of the kind of polarization. And we all know what happened this weekend in Buffalo and California, and we have our own examples homegrown here. So all groups, including including the members of the Jewish community, Jewish Canadians. We all have to work together. And so I'm really glad to be here to have a conversation about strengthening the bonds between us so that we're working in the same direction to make this a safe and thriving place for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Nira. Pat?
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you all again. I think last time we saw each other was probably during the 2018 provincial election when I ran in Ottawa West-Nepean. I've actually been volunteering with the Green Party since I was 17 years old. Since then, I have held the position of treasurer. I've served as 2 official agents for the Jennifer Purdy and Andrew West campaigns. In Jennifer Purdy's campaign in 2019, I helped her campaign yield a 6.5% vote share, which was the highest Green share of the vote in the Ottawa metro area. I have earned a graduate certificate in environmental studies and a diploma in horticultural industries. At Algonquin College, this was where I learned about how cities and suburbs contribute to climate change and how we can reintroduce nature into our cities to help mitigate climate change instead of fuel it. I've grown up gardening in my mother's perennial garden and spent my summers working in the gardens of my friends and family. So I'm very passionate and very connected to issues of the environment, but I'm also very committed just as passionately to issues dealing with social justice. I've been working in customer service since I was 16 years old. Most of this service I got in the food service industry, where I held supervisor roles and chaired health and safety committees. Here is also where I honed my listening, problem solving, and leadership skills I hope to bring with me to Queen's Park. Thank you for your time today.
Pat, thank you. Stephen?
So my name is Stephen Warren. I am the Green Party of Ontario candidate for Ottawa West-Nepean. If elected, I would be Ontario's youngest, and I would be the first openly autistic MPP. I'm running because I really would like to see change here in Ontario, and I really believe that we can do that as long as we commit to fighting to make the change so that we can help our communities. I want to thank you so much for allowing us Green candidates to be here today. I'm very excited to be here to see that what we could do to improve community standards here in Ottawa. I look forward to seeing what we can see here today, and hopefully we can see what can happen for the community. Thank you.
Thanks all. We'll now turn to our formal questions, and I'd like to ask Ally to begin them.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks everyone for your opening statements. I want to talk a little bit about anti-Semitism, security, and racism, which I know has already been raised in the opening statements. So anti-Semitism and other forms of hate are on the rise. Jewish houses of worship, schools, childcare facilities, and community centers have been vandalized or attacked around the globe, often with deadly consequences. And we're not immune here in Ontario. So Jewish holidays and life cycle events in our province are often celebrated with paid duty police or security personnel guarding the doors. It's unfortunate that this is the case, but it is. Worshippers plan toward which exit they will run or where they will hide if an attacker enters the sanctuary. Ensuring safety in the face of hatred is not a responsibility that should be borne by individual communities alone. It requires support from the government. So my question today is, how would your party provide support for the safety and security at community institutions such as houses of worship, community centers, schools, childcare facilities, and summer camps?
So I could take this question. Thank you for asking. This is a good question. I personally believe I'd like to see more consultation with police services and city council and with other local officials with communities so that we can ensure that communities are safe. This is a big concern. We really need to see safer communities. People have a right to feel safe, and no one should be ever in a position where they are feared they may be attacked. So, for me, I'd really like to have seen perhaps if City Council and the Ottawa Police Services Board perhaps had consultation with community groups in Ottawa before the trucker convoy rolled into town and stayed here for 3 weeks. So us Greens, we are presenting, we believe that There should be more consultation between police services, and so we see we protect communities. There should be consultation so that we know what these communities need so that we can ensure everyone feels safe, because everyone has a right to feel safe.
Stephen, thank you. Don't feel the need to comment on each question, but if any of you would like to add to Stephen's answer, also please feel free. So any of you like to add to that? Okay, Shelby.
Sorry, my space bar isn't letting me unmute. I think that was a great answer from Stephen, and the general idea of consultation and working with our city councillors and getting those lines of communication open, that's really key. To supplement that a little bit, I think that police culture and their training currently experiences a serious deficit of, I guess, engagement that's more on a listening kind of front. And culturally relevant education. Police services they're currently a little bit strained because of the severe weight of mental health problems that the officers often just have to silently take in their career paths. So alleviating a little bit of that from their end might also give us room to inject some culturally sensitive training that the Green Party already wants to make mandatory for all public-facing professionals, so that when there is that consultation and that communication and that proactive instead of reactive work happening, it might be more fruitful, the end results, and that these groups might know a little bit more about each other, and it might be more productive.
Nira?
Thanks. Sorry, it takes a minute to unmute. I'm of a generation that isn't spending all my time on the internet. But what I have become aware of, both as a teacher and a mother, is that that's where most of this is, of the thinking, this great replacement theory that's supposedly the shooter in Buffalo was subscribed. I'd never heard of it before. I think one of the essential pieces we need is way better, deeper monitoring of what's happening on the web and connecting that to the police, because people have said in the wake of Buffalo that there were something like 180 or 300 pages of manifesto on the internet available to see who this guy is. So the police services and security services weren't making a connection clearly between what was on the web and identifying a person who is potentially a very dangerous person. And the connection between what's on the web and what security measures I'm not a police officer, so I don't know the language, but we need to be connecting those two so that what we're seeing on the web is being translated into meaningful security, proactive security action at houses of worship, at community centers, at events. And I think that that's a kind of systemic way that we are missing the mark right now in providing safety and security for all communities in their everyday life. Thanks.
Thank you. Ally, next question, please.
Thanks. And actually, this has been touched on a little bit already, but happy to hear more. So Statistics Canada's latest report on police reported hate crime demonstrated that Jewish Canadians remain the country's most frequently targeted religious minority. Jews are approximately 1% of Canada's population, but were victimized by 62% of hate crimes against a religious group. How will your party provide support, including enhanced training, to identify and respond to anti-Semitism, to improve the capacity of police, crown attorneys, and judges to address the unique features of hate-motivated crime and extremism?
This is a great question, and you are totally right. I think it's simply not acceptable how disproportionate the amount of hate crimes Jewish Canadians face. And I think we should address this. And that's what we seek to do. I would like to see more of a preventive response more than a reactive response in response to hate crimes. So I would definitely like to see increased training at the Ontario Police College for new police constables. So there is more of a focus on seeing what a crime is a hate crime. I think Crown attorneys should also take a lens of recognizing hate when a criminal offense has occurred. So overall, we think we should be preventing hate crimes. We should be addressing hate crimes when they occur, and we should be calling it out when we see it. Thank you.
Thanks. Pat, did you have something you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, actually, Stephen brought up some great points. And in a textbook I was reading for university by Lydia Milan, Policy Analysis in Canada, she mentioned some statistics that talk about how politicians increasingly speak about hate crimes and cracking down on hate crimes all over Canada. But the reports coming from arrests show that there have been increasing arrests in assaults and not necessarily increasing amounts of arrests in hate crimes. So I think, as politicians and, as people working in the judicial system, we need to work on training our police officers and first responders to be able to recognize and distinguish between what is an assault and what is a hate crime, so that the system can respond appropriately and justice can be delivered in how it should be delivered.
Sorry, had trouble moving my cursor to the unmute button. Shelby? You're on mute now.
Yes, my space bar is not doing what it's supposed to do today. I think Nira raised her hand at the same time as me, and if we don't have time for 2 answers on this, I would be happy to let her speak, but I can also share if need be.
Nira?
I can be very brief. And I think it's kind of another way of stating what I said earlier. The difference, the continuum between hate speech to hate crime to physical assault or spray painting a synagogue or beating people up, or it is a continuum. And I think that that's not fully appreciated yet. And so it goes back again to my cyber point. These big things start small, and anyone who's studied history, whether it's the Holocaust in Rwanda or any, what's going on, women who often report threats that are not taken seriously and stamped unfounded and filed away. We really have to take hate seriously at the hate speech level, whether it's orally or online or published anywhere. And we have to deal with it very severely at that point and not wait till it gets to an action. Thanks.
Okay, Shelby.
I'll build on the wonderful points of my colleagues and hopefully, I guess, define where I see these things to trickle into each other. So the Green Party is all about a preventative instead of reactive approach to problems in the world wherever possible. I think the ground zero for a lot of hate crimes would, as most people would agree, be ignorance. The Green Party is passionate in our education platform about including culturally specific education in relevant points of the curriculum for considering what age the kids are at and what they're learning about. So we think that education about the Holocaust and about Jewish people and their traditions and their customs, if we can infuse that as much as possible into the general public, I think that that will stave off some of the ugly future places people find themselves in. Sort of like Nira's points about the internet, there's an insidious way in which speech and things that people try to write off as freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and everything like that, eventually have an end output of hate and a true concrete impact. I've learned that a lot of these things are born of disturbing and maybe conspiratorial views about the role of Jewish people in the world and their place they occupy within the rest of society. So I think that, again, enhancing the education of law enforcement and people in legally related bodies to understand that sometimes these gray areas aren't always gray. We have to look at the end output and nip that in the bud, hit the brakes on it as soon as possible, pointing to the end point of these theories that sometimes emerge, like Holocaust denial, for instance, that ought to be classified as hate speech, because the endpoint of it has a philosophical point about the dynamics of power in the world between maybe Jewish people and the rest of the world, and it's entirely false and not true and fantastical and ridiculous. So educating law enforcement and legally related bodies on the nature of these theories that often arise, trying to stop them from arising to start with, making law enforcement and legally related bodies more literate in, different symbols that are used, and like Nira was saying about the internet, it's even in relation to the struggles of other peoples, the closest that I can relate with, of course, not being a Jewish person myself, might be as a woman. Police are brought disgusting material from the internet, threats written, hateful material written, and they simply don't know all of the words and phrases that are codes for different things and what they mean. So making them as literate as possible in that, so they can understand the gravity of something as it's unfolding and the seriousness of it, is absolutely a step in the right direction, as is just starting young with our children. Bit of a rambly answer, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Ally? Next question.
Thanks. And Shelby, thanks. I think that was a really good segue to our next, I actually have two questions on one topic, if that's okay. So the Holocaust Knowledge and Awareness Survey conducted by the Claims Conference demonstrated that an alarming 62% of Canadian millennials were not aware that 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust, and 22% have not heard or are unsure if they have heard of the Holocaust at all. So my two questions on that would be, will your party draw on expert research and community input to ensure that anti-Semitism and Holocaust education are systemically integrated within educational curriculum and anti-racism initiatives? And then the second part to that would be if your party would commit to including Jewish Ontarians' current lived experience of anti-Semitism, along with the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism as a guide, into a renewed provincial anti-racism strategy.
Who
Okay,
wants to tackle this one first?
So yes, oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I think Nira will take the first half of the question, and then we'll work together on the second half. And when you're ready, Nira, just let me know and I'll take the baton.
Yeah, that's a huge question. And I might ask you to repeat little pieces of it, but I'm just going to, I'm an educator. I taught in high schools for 31 years, as I said, in multicultural, diverse high schools, public high schools. I'm just going to start with a little story. My father was a middle school teacher in Winnipeg. He was a brown man. He taught in the premier kind of Jewish middle school in the Center Point area of Winnipeg. And I loved history, and I studied history and social studies, as we do through middle school and high school. And I'm going to tell you that never once did I ever hear anything about the Holocaust. That's in Winnipeg in the 60s and 70s. And we lived in the West End, the Kanata of Winnipeg, the new development, and we were the only brown family in a white neighborhood in the 60s, and everyone voted conservative in that community. So in a way, looking back, I'm not surprised that I graduated from high school having no clue what the Holocaust was. And then I went to University of Winnipeg and started to learn about it, and was shocked that I'd never been taught it. If you fast forward that to many people's experience with other histories now, my own, I only discovered my own history when I was 26, studying the history of Indians in the Caribbean. Indigenous history is now being unearthed. And I know that for years, there's been massive denial about, well, ignorance about who the First Peoples of Canada are. So to go back to my opening statement, I am deeply committed to the dispelling. My father always said, prejudice is born of ignorance and fear. And the fear comes from the ignorance. So we have to dispel the ignorance by educating people. And the place where we have people is in the schools. So we must have mandatory education of the significant histories and relevant histories of all the people who make up Canada, including Jewish people. And whether or not you're 1% of the population, like Jewish Canadians, or is it 3% for Indigenous Canadians, or whatever percentage, it's not a kind of prorated thing. So you'll get 2 hours of Holocaust education because there's not that many Jewish people in this neighborhood. I mean, in fact, I think that's how my history teachers must have made that calculation back in Winnipeg in the 70s. So I think I teach the grade 10 history. I taught the grade 10 history course. The Holocaust, the causes, anti-Semitism, the long 2,000-year history of it, that has to be an integral part of that course, because every Ontario school child has to take that course. So I think it has to be mandatory. In the same way that the grade 11, where there's political will now around Indigenous history and Indigenous education about Indigenous issues to non-Indigenous Canadians, they've, in the Ontario curriculum, we've taken the grade, the grade 11 English course, and we've made it an Indigenous studies course. I taught in Toronto when I first started teaching in my 20s in York Region, and I taught at Bayview Secondary School, which was mostly an upper or a middle class Jewish high school. And I saw a very different curriculum there, and I didn't see it in other high schools. So clearly, Jewish communities, like other communities, like Black communities, like Indigenous communities now, are very good at and committed to teaching their own community, their own children, their history. But it's everybody else who needs to know everybody else's history. So it has to be mandatory. And then that's just, I sat on many anti-racist in education boards, both for parents and as a teacher, as a staff member, and as an instructional coach. And it is an active part of schools. I think actually that the public school system that I've worked in anyway is on the leading edge of education in terms of diverse histories. Not to say that there isn't work to be done, but I hope that answers the first part of the question. Yes, I'm committed to mandatory education of the Holocaust and this history of the Jewish people, both globally and in Canada.
Thank you, Nira.
Yes. Yeah, so to go into the second part of the question, I feel as though this is a very sensitive question, and I would kind of appreciate your patience as we navigate it together. I would like to reiterate that not only as candidates here, but I think as human beings, everyone on this panel will not tolerate any form of hate toward any ethnic group, and we'll do everything that we can to support any group experiencing discrimination and conflict. Anti-Semitism is a very real problem and a very serious problem, and more needs to be done to put a stop to it permanently. I would also like to point out that the Green Party believes strongly in the core values of democracy, including a citizen's right to protest their government. As we saw in Ottawa this past February, this right to protest the government is sometimes abused, and certain groups with certain agendas can have extremely negative influences on the messages and outcomes of protests. My understanding of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism is that this definition includes any form of protest towards the state of Israel to be considered as an act of anti-Semitism. Personally, I believe this clause in the definition infringes on the democratic right to protest the decisions and the policy agenda of a government. I think that there are ways the international community can work toward. Yeah.
I'm going to interject only because I suggest that you actually read the IHRA definition. It does not prohibit a policy protest against the state of Israel.
Okay, sure. I was just going off of what I was advised from a colleague. So at that point, I guess I'll cut off my discussion on this topic. But I guess in conclusion, I would just like to say that I'm committed on educating people on issues of anti-Semitism, and I guess that including myself. I need to be a little bit more aware of these issues before acting on anything.
For all of you, we are happy to provide copies of the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, and perhaps David, who's listening, can distribute those to you. Would anybody else like to comment?
I don't have any, I don't have anything to add to the substance of that answer, but I just want to say thank you for that. Thank you for offering that to us, because I think that, there's a perception of politicians just arriving with untarnished expertise on something, but the worst mistake a politician can make is to think yourself any kind of expert and think that your learning is ever done and that it stops, and to essentially become arrogant. So for you to offer that to us shows that you recognize that the truth is to the contrary, and it means a lot. Thank you.
We're pleased to do it, and once we do it, if you have any questions, we'd be pleased to answer those as well. Nira, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'm just looking back at the questions. Will your party commit to including Jewish Ontarians' current lived experience? Correct? That's the question where, and I apologize, I'm sure you're aware that during a campaign, and this is fast and furious, I've looked at the CIJA website, but I haven't had a chance to read it in depth. But looking at this question, what it reminds me of is whenever we say no, I can't remember the expression at the moment, but no policy about us without us, or I think what's happening, and BIPOC people say this, and Indigenous peoples now are, and I think we all need to be saying this and respecting this. Nobody can speak for another person's lived experience, and we all sit here in this room know, we all in this room know that Stephen knows, my son has autism also. Stephen knows that no one looks through the world through the way he does. I know that no one looks at the world. No one is experiencing this Zoom the way I'm experiencing it as a woman of color with a scratchy throat who is about to choke, right? So I'm going to stop. No one is experiencing it the same way. So it's really essential in this particular question that I think what's speaking to me is that Jewish Ontarians' current lived experience needs to be a baseline and a bedrock of any policy that the Ontario government at any level, whether it's in education or policing, or in whatever level, in whatever sphere, that a lot of people can't come from the outside with their studies. I mean, studies are important, but people's lived experience has to be balanced with all of those studies out there, because none of us wants to be talked about white-splained or Jewish-splained or mansplained. People need to speak for themselves, and we need to take them seriously, and then we need to behave like good allies for each other. And that's something we're actually all learning, and we're making a lot of mistakes, all of us, in different ways, but we're learning how to be allies for each other. But we have to always center the experience of the people who walk in those shoes, and never try and speak for them. Walk beside them, but don't try and speak for them. And that goes for crafting and enforcing policy as well. I hope that addresses the question. I think it does.
No, it does. So we're gonna change direction now, and I'm gonna ask a couple of questions. I am cognizant of the time, and I know we have 4 candidates, but if we can keep answers short so that we can preserve some time for questions that have been submitted by our those who are watching. So thank you for all of that, and thanks to Ally. We'll now move on to different topics. Jewish Ontarians have worked tirelessly to make Ontario a great province in which to live and in which to grow old. They deserve to age in dignity within their communities. Ethnocultural long-term care homes, like our Hilla Lodge here in Ottawa, are key parts of Ontario's long-term care system and provide seniors with culturally appropriate care. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed several systemic challenges facing long-term care in our province, including the sustainability of culturally appropriate care. So here's the question. How will your party safeguard the sustainability and accessibility of culturally appropriate long-term care and ensure admissions policies more effectively prioritize culturally appropriate care? Who wants to take that one first? Okay, we've got Shelby, first hand up.
Thanks for that. No, just as somebody who's part of an aging family and who watched my mom growing up, I hope I don't get emotional during this answer. I always get emotional talking about the long-term care. I'm so sorry, but as someone who watched my mom when I was growing up be the primary advocate, caretaker, nurturer for the majority of my family who was aging, we happen to have lots of elderly people go through those end chapters of life with things like Alzheimer's and dementia and having to fight the administrative and bureaucratic battles of finding them an adequate, not even I'd say nice, but just adequate placement. It makes me very passionate about the long-term care material on the platform and the care of the elderly on the platform. So the general Green Party platform regarding long-term care sees the long-term care deficits right now as being part of the general healthcare deficits, where a lot of workers in these homes are in work environments that are short-staffed. They don't have adequate, mental health resources. They're not allowed to take vacations. They're, often PSWs who, yes, have received a pay bump recently, but they're still not at a living wage. They need chances for micro-credentials and professional development, just like other healthcare workers do. And so injecting a better work environment into these places will help in general all Canadians, and it will free up resources to be able to make more LTC beds and put that plan absolutely in harmony with the general item. You can explicitly read it on the Green Party platform, where culturally relevant services for different communities are a priority on our part. So I was looking at the Green Party platform in general, and something we're passionate about is the new emerging, tactic, I guess, of making institutions more of a home theme for people. That can be incredibly soothing and inject a hefty dose of ease and flow to somebody maybe experiencing Alzheimer's or dementia or just the normal cognitive decline of old age. And it's also incredibly soothing considering how many of our older folks have rampant loneliness, which is extremely physically and mentally corrosive as well. And I think that the theme of culture fits with that theme of home care and familiarity, and that they're inseparable, and it would be considered indispensable as part of that plan that's already part of the Green Party platform. So we would be excited to prioritize that and make sure that it's there as part of the soft place to land that we want for the future of Canada's aging population, that growing segment of the population.
It looked like Nira was chomping at the bit to add something in, but perhaps I'm mistaken. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to add? Okay, great. Next question. Poverty in the Jewish community has been on the rise in Ontario for decades. One of the most concerning trends is food insecurity among Jewish seniors in Ottawa who are unable to access affordable kosher food. Question, will your party provide support to ethnocultural Meals on Wheels programs to help address food insecurity for the most vulnerable? Who wants to take that one? Okay, Shelby.
I'm hogging the elder themed questions, as you can tell. I hope that's okay with my other group members. But so playing on the last answer that I gave, the theme of home care and that commitment to that strategy on the part of the Green Party absolutely would include the Meals on Wheels program. Again, I think it's important on several mental health fronts. It's emotionally and cognitively soothing, probably. It gets rid of the institutional flavor of a lot of, places of support that elder people consult. In terms of the general problem of poverty amongst the elderly, some things that are part of the Green Party platform include a universal basic income, which I think would alleviate a lot of that strain currently being experienced. And a lot of older folks, acquire maybe chronic or permanent conditions in their life. The Green Party wants to, in fact, double ODSP so that people with an official disability are not getting paid something that is actually below the average rent for an apartment in Ottawa. The average, I think, bedroom, I haven't read this as an official statistic, but doing my own internet research, renting a bedroom in someone's house nowadays approximates, almost $1,000 or something. A single family home is like $800,000. Most families, we have a lot of dual income families nowadays. So even if somebody is able to care for their loved one at home, that situation might be strained. And the extra injection of funds, if that person's disabled or just if they're a human being, as UBI promises, I think that that'll definitely alleviate some of the strain we're seeing in this population.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, Pat, you have your virtual hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. As a horticulturalist and as someone running for the Green Party, I'm super keen on supporting local food infrastructure, especially in the riding of Kanata-Carleton. We have a very unique riding layout where a majority of our riding is in fact like rural and contains a lot of agricultural space. So I think we could be supporting our farmers to provide these kind of kosher foods for our Jewish elderly living in care homes. And I think also the province could work towards supporting garden infrastructure in and around these homes, because there have been studies that have proven the mental health benefits of participating in gardening. And on the note of universal basic income and guaranteed livable income, in Kanata-Carleton for my campaign, I will be prioritizing increases in ODSP. If I were to choose one policy over the other, it would be the ODSP policy, because I think that policy will have a greater impact in lifting people who are earning less than what is considered the poverty line annually up out of poverty, and seeing those benefits kind of trickle throughout society.
Thank you. Okay. Ally, thanks for your help, and to our candidates for their answers so far. We'll now move to the open forum.
Maybe I could just add one.
Go ahead, Nira.
Sorry, maybe I could just add one quick thing. It just occurs as I'm listening to Shelby and Pat, and I go back to the idea that communities know best what they need from the inside. So funding and other supports for community organizations that provide, whether that's Jewish Family Services and what other organizations that within the community provide those kinds of culturally appropriate and culturally sensitive both services, whether it's food, meal delivery, whatever it is, funding for those organizations needs to be solid, stable, and adequate. Thanks.
Okay, nice add. Okay, so we're going to move to open forum Q&A moderated by our CEO, Andrea. As a reminder to those watching, please submit your questions in the chat to the moderator, and Andrea will do her best to get to everyone. Andrea?
Thank you, Michael. And first of all, thank you all both for joining us today, but really for your passion and your dedication and your commitment. It is not easy putting yourself forward as a candidate. And so I really applaud all of you, and also for your openness to understand other people's lived experiences. And Shelby, never apologize for your passion. It's great that you care, and emotion's a good thing. So really hats off to you. Sarah Caspi, who's the executive director of Jewish Family Services, is curious to better understand what your party's platform is in terms of the need to increase services in mental health, seniors, and newcomer needs, specifically more access to mental health supports, as well as capacity building dollars. If you can maybe speak to that for a moment. Shelby.
Sure, I'll get the ball rolling, and if any of my colleagues want to jump on board or even interject, of course, that's always welcome. So the Green Party recognizes that, again, it's that proactive instead of reactive approach that we apply to healthcare as well too. Getting people help when they're young is vital and crucial. I think something like 80% currently of young people, student-aged people who have a mental health problem are on an atrocious wait list. I believe wealthier families, as it stands, as I'm told by a teacher, can currently, do a pay bump and get their kid bumped up on the list, and that's unacceptable. I'm told by a teacher friend of mine that the norm is maybe if there is a school psychologist, that person might be able to come in like once a week and see maybe 10 students. So targeting the youth and trying to have that preventative approach would be done by injecting the presence of a wider variety and higher number of specialists in schools. And then regarding the future of mental health with the Green Party of Ontario, we would include mental health services under OHIP because they are philosophically the same as physical health services in our point of view. And we'd also have a joint ministry of mental health and addictions services that would lubricate the delivery of those services and also philosophically testify to the kinship of those two things as the Green Party sees it. And our seniors, as I kind of echoed before, would absolutely benefit from this new approach, this re-engineering of our current, I think, deeply flawed system.
Maybe, thank you for that, Shelby. Stephen, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I really want to say mental health is health. We need to do more mental health. I echo exactly what Shelby said. We really do. I was someone who I struggled with my mental health in high school, especially in the pandemic. Virtual first year university, didn't really have that first year experience, so you're kind of lonely. So I really would like to see investments in mental health centers, investments for youth for mental health. Wait lists, we want to get that down to no more than 30 days for youth, because youth are waiting upwards of 18 months for mental health services. And that, to me, that's unacceptable. We need to do better. And I'm very happy that our Green Party, we are calling for a 3-digit mental health response line. During that, instead of sending police response to mental health case, we can send community support. We can divert funding from justice and instead towards actually helping people. We can improve the mental health of Ontarians, and we can improve the lives of Ontarians. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I know we're running short on time, and I think Shelby and Stephen spoke very eloquently to that issue. So perhaps I'll move on to the final question that's been submitted via the chat. And it's from a community member who's curious to know each of your positions on the BDS movement.
I guess I can start with that. As someone who's running for provincial politics, I am aware that I have very little influence over this federal policy. I think every political party really struggles in managing their extreme left and their extreme right factions within their groups. And some parties are a little bit better at managing it than others. But I have doubt that my position as a provincial politician will have any influence over the either redaction or continuation of this policy.
Shelby?
I'll just add on my colleague's point there. I'll echo one part of it. We get asked a lot about global affairs from people in the community, especially door knocking, who maybe don't know what kinds of things are under provincial jurisdiction, but maybe this person's question that we're getting right now was inspired by and along the same lines as the question that you foreshadowed to us over email about would we collaborate perhaps in research with endeavors being carried out in Israel that might benefit the world and so on. And I think as much as I can say as a provincial candidate, a provincial politician, each opportunity that crosses our path would be looked at in and of itself. the pros and cons would be weighed, and we would treat that as we would any other issue from any other maybe country in the world that comes across the table of the Green Party of Ontario. I know that the specific movement in the viewer's question just now has its own, and I'm speaking as someone who, I'll confess my ignorance again, I'm passionate about provincial politics because I think it's, you know, I think it's an interesting opportunity to pivot between federal and municipal, and you can do more on just the community level, which I think is very powerful, and it's a powerful antidote to cynicism when you've gone and done something and you could show other places that such and such isn't going to work, right? My field of vision might be a little biased towards the community side of things, and therefore I must confess my ignorance. I'm not very well versed on that movement in certain circles right now, but when it comes to opportunities to collaborate with and interact, maybe Ontario to Israel, we would look at the situation in and of itself and examine the pros and cons, and if something could benefit, if something coming out of Israel could benefit the whole world, we would certainly be interested in that.
Yeah, and I'm very appreciative of Shelby kind of helping me out with this answer, because there are really great investments and really great technologies coming out of Israel. Like I know they're leading the world in research and in technology, and they were producing some really amazing research during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so to kind of backpedal on my answer, I guess, like those are the kind of initiatives that we would support coming from anywhere in the world.
Anyone else? Okay.
So Michael, back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. So thanks for the questions, and thank you, Andrea. We're now going to ask for your closing remarks. Let's try and put a 90-second time limit on it, please. Shorter if you can. So let's start with the person who was last in on opening. That would be Stephen.
Thank you, Michael. So I'm running, I really want to make change here in Ontario and in our communities. I want to empower communities. I really like to see change. I'd like to see more social justice advocacy, and overall I want to see also more climate change action as a young person. If elected, I would be Ontario's youngest, and I'd also be the first openly autistic MPP. Aside from that, I want to be the advocate and the voice for the people. I want to rise at Queen's Park. I want to challenge our leaders. I want to actually fight for real change. I want to make empty promises I'm not going to deliver on. I don't want to make empty speeches I'm not going to deliver on. I want to see real change and real action, and that's something I'm willing to fight for. Michael, if I heard correctly, I understand that you do live in my riding. I would very much appreciate your support. However, I understand that's something I have to work for, and I'd be really glad to work for that support. And as well, I assume my Green colleagues would also be willing to support, willing to be fighting to earn the support of the Jewish community in Ottawa. Thank you so much for having me here.
Stephen, thanks. Drop by my house anytime. I work from home usually Tuesdays and Thursdays and sometimes Fridays. So there you go. And so now let's go to Pat.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much again for the opportunity to speak to your community today. I would just like to reiterate that as a student of economics, I can really see that what the Ontario PCs have planned for Ontario is not sustainable, and it underestimates the potential of the Ontario economy. It's time to stop playing games with the people of Ontario. The Ontario NDP can talk all they want about how they're the only alternative to Doug Ford's PCs, but I just have to look to British Columbia and see the atrocities happening there in the Great Rainforests, and with their failure to protect Indigenous communities, that the NDP doesn't really care about the environment, and this culture is sure to transmit across to Ontario's NDPs. I truly believe that the Ontario Greens, led by Mike Schreiner, is the best path forward for us through this crisis of climate, housing, and healthcare. I am inspired by Mike's knowledge on issues facing this province and the conviction with which he speaks on reaching sustainable solutions that are fair for everybody. For my Jewish friends living in Kanata-Carleton, this election, I hope I can count on your support and your support for the Green Party. As a young Green MPP, I promise to take energy, fresh ideas, and hard work to Queen's Park to deliver solutions to Kanata-Carleton that work for everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Nira?
Hi, thank you for this hour. Thank you for the chance to really focus on the issues that matter to the Jewish community represented by the Jewish Federation of Ottawa. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of things to know when you put yourself up for public office, and everybody's got concerns, and it's hard to balance them all and get to know all of them. So it's really helpful to have had this invitation to sit down, the invitation to look at the website, and your explanations and your ongoing invitations to dialogue with you, so that we can learn more about what your priorities are, and when elected, make sure that we and in our campaign, make sure that we are speaking to those in a meaningful way on the campaign trail and at Queen's Park. So thanks for the opportunity to think and listen and share our thoughts with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Nira. And that leaves Shelby.
Thanks for this. Thank you again for listening to me today and inviting me to be here to listen to you. This was a lovely conversation, and I'm so glad that I was able to be present for it. I would say that the theme of my campaigning so far has been myth busting. People think that the Greens are just the environment people. They think that we're a one-issue party, but Ottawa Centre residents that I've spoken with have told me that they're delighted that our party has positions about, the state of our healthcare system, worry for affordable housing, the cost of living, the environment, the state of education, our community's marginalized groups. I'm running for the Green Party of Ontario because I want to run for the party with the smartest solutions, and the solutions on the Green Party's platform are ones that all in one shot tend to be kind to the planet, but also just happen to be what boosts quality of life and creates an ease of life for residents, and also saves municipalities and individual residents money. And so I want to run for the party with smart solutions, because smart solutions recognize that what's better for people is usually just better for the world. So I'm here to hopefully communicate and leave you with some ideas about the communities that the Green Party wants to build, where I think our best and brightest future lies in. I know that you've left me with ideas from your end that I'll certainly take with me and have in my field of vision on the campaign trail, and hopefully beyond if I join Mike Schreiner at Queen's Park, where I'll fight for a better life for all Ontarians. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We know it's a hectic time for you. We appreciate you making the time to be with us today. Thank you to Ally. Thank you to Andrea. Thank you to all of the behind the scenes people who make this possible. We wish you the best of luck, and have a wonderful rest of your day. And Nira, just for me, say hi to Roshan for us. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Have a great day.